Okay, brilliant. Yes, so I am Katie and I work for a company in Bristol called Graphic Science. From there, I run the STEM Ambassador Programme in this area. Just out of pure nosiness, who's heard of the STEM Ambassador Programme before? Oh, pretty good. Okay, for those of you who haven't, STEM is science, technology, engineering and maths. And the programme is a way for people who work in one of those areas to volunteer some time and work with their local schools. So I spend a lot of my life out in schools talking to teachers, mostly secondary, people teaching science or DT or maths, finding out what kind of STEM enrichment they want to be doing at school, whether that's inviting people into their classroom or coming to wonderful events like the BioBlitzes. So today I wanted to go through some things that hopefully might help you guys get involved with schools. I think Matt said this morning 15% of you have had successful times getting schools involved in BioBlitzes. Let's make it more. I know it's not easy, and that's why hopefully today some of these things might make it a little less of a challenge trying to convince schools that they do want to come and get involved in your BioBlitzes. So in a minute we're going to start with why a BioBlitz is a great thing for a school to do, then talk about why maybe they're not doing it even if they want to, why it's really hard for them to get involved in BioBlitzes. A little bit about communicating with schools when your BioBlitz is and what's happening. And when I was listening to Matt's talking, I was thinking, it's a lot of the stuff I was going to say. Turns out talking to teachers is quite like talking to journalists. So hopefully that will embed some of that stuff in your head. And then finally, at the end, just a bit of time to plan. And I knew I was coming in at the end of the day, so it might be a chance for you to pick up on some of the things you've heard throughout the day which you really like the sound of, and maybe think about how they might fit into your next event and how that might work well with schools as well. And so hopefully we'll have time to fit that in at the end. Is there anything in particular people were hoping to talk about when it comes to engaging schools that maybe it doesn't look like we're going to cover? No, okay, well it's quite a interactive session where I'll go, let's talk about this, and we'll talk about it. So if you think of something, grab me and we can definitely fit that in. I'm keen to make sure that everyone thinks about things they want to. Okay, so in your tables, I would like you to discuss what it is about your BioBlitz that makes it a brilliant opportunity for schools. So we know why we like doing them. We know why it's good for schools to get involved to help us out, but actually from a teacher's perspective, why is it worthwhile going to a BioBlitz? What are they going to get out of it? What are their students going to get out of it? And that might be little ones, that might be classes of 5-year-olds, that might be the older ones, we might be talking about sort of 16, 17-year-olds. Obviously we need to be thinking about the teenagers. On the pie chart this morning, that was an appallingly small sector, which was teenagers. So working with schools is a really good way to try and hit that age category as well. So I'm going to bring some bright yellow post-its around. If each table to come up with their top 3 things, this is like your sales pitch that Matt's talking about, top 3 things that you think makes it a worthwhile activity for a school to want to get involved in. I'm only going to give you sort of 3-4 minutes, so quick chats on your table, and then I'll come and grab some of those and just tell you what the rest of the room is thinking about. Okay, I'm going to deliver post-it notes now. I know it's quite a broad topic. I'm very aware that this table have already moved on to the second conversation though, so... Oh, my microphone's gone. Okay, I've nabbed some of the post-its off some tables. I know some tables got up to 9. There's clearly lots of reasons that schools should be getting involved. I thought I'd run through some of the ones that seem to have come up from quite a few of the conversations. Key thing, getting hands-on with genuine science. So that's the thing that teachers struggle with. It can be really hard to do it, A, in the classroom, and B, if their expertise isn't in doing practical biology, it can be quite hard to give the students an opportunity to do that. And I'm very aware that that is a massive bonus of getting involved with the BioBlitz. Links to the curriculum are a bonus, but I wouldn't say that that's a key thing. Normally when I'm talking to teachers about this, they say, well, it's something extracurricular, it's an enhancement and enrichment, it's going beyond what they have to learn for the curriculum. But any links to it are obviously a bonus. Shuffle through these. Meeting people who work in science was a key one as well. So having that chance to go and talk to specialists. Again, teachers aren't those people, so it's something different that the school can't ordinarily offer them. I had loads and loads of conversations, and I'm sorry to have cut that short, but we need to move on to the next thing to make sure we've got plenty of time. But do you focus on that? That is your key selling point to schools, why it's a great opportunity for them. So I sat down and had a think about some of the barriers I hear teachers talking about when it comes to going on trips, BioBlitz trips, but also any off-site trip more generally. And I came up with these as a starting point. So I thought we could start by going through these, and then any others that you've experienced when you've been working with schools, or any that you foresee when you're working with schools, we can go through those as well. So we've kind of started with number one, selling the idea. We've just come up with your sales pitches of why you think it's a good thing to do and why it's worthwhile. Bear that in mind, that's key. You want to make sure that teachers see that as the first thing they hear about. That's why they should get involved. Timing can be quite a challenge with schools. We were having a conversation this morning about the fact that a lot of BioBlitzes do have to be at the weekend, and that's brilliant for getting families and the publics involved. But obviously it's hard to get a school group to come on a Saturday. So people talking about engaging with other groups of kids, so people like scouts and guides, it's a really great thing to do. And maybe you want to think about going for the format where you start on a Friday and run into the Saturday, and actually the Friday is a schools focused day. There's been loads of success of doing that, so that can help with that kind of timing. In terms of academic year, there's no right and wrong answer, but it's worth sitting down and chatting to people who know schools quite well to think about when exams fall. So for secondary schools especially, exams are really, really crucial. So you don't want to be doing things in sort of May, June time. They're too preoccupied sometimes. It depends on the year group. So younger years, year 7, 8, 9, they're not so focused on exams. For those, it's easier to get them out any time of year, but summer can be really hard. A really good time of year in terms of weather and academic year, June and July. Exams are over, it's a bit more flexible, the teachers are a little less stressed out, and they can have the whole academic year to plan getting the students out and to take part in these events. School holidays is an obvious one. You don't want to plan it for an Easter or half term if you want there to be school groups coming, but also think about when they're coming back into school. You might think, oh, beginning of September, weather might be on our side, schools are back. But realistically, they're unlikely to commit to something in the first 2 weeks of a term just because there's so much going on in terms of staff changes and new kids starting. They've got too much to be thinking about to let it happen at that time. Also, we were talking earlier about partnering up with people for these. Some of you might be aware of National Science and Engineering Week, which happens in March every year. That's quite a nationally celebrated event, and it's worth maybe considering badging it with that if it's happening at a similar time. It might get on extra newsletters, and it's a bit of extra publicity if it's part of this National Science and Engineering Week. And I can have a chat with anyone if they want to think more about that. One of the other things teachers normally struggle with is the paperwork and permission side of it. It takes forever. I don't know how many of you have seen or teachers often have to fill out. It's different in every school, but I often see a stack of paper genuinely like this that has to be filled out for every single form, for every single trip that happens outside of school. It's a big commitment for the teacher to do, especially if it's above and beyond everything else they're already committed to doing. So we want to make that as easy as possible. If you can provide them with the risk assessment you're doing for your site, brilliant, that's something they'll need. And again, give them as much time as possible. If you know it's going to happen in May, even if not every detail is pinned down, if you know the date and the place, tell them in September, October, and then they've got much more time to get it in the academic diary and to get permission from the parents of the kids, from their senior staff, and to make sure that it's in the academic year diary as early as possible. Some schools actually firm up all their trips the academic year before, so they might be filling it up in June, July, ready for activities not happening until sort of November or onwards. So it's worth thinking about trying to give teachers as much a chance to make it happen as possible. Staff cover isn't one that we can really do much about. They need to bring staff with the students, but we can help by making sure that we're allowing them to bring maybe a whole class of students. So imagine for every teacher that's at this BioBlitz happening on a weekday, they should be stood in front of their class teaching in a normal, traditional fashion. If they can bring their entire class, that's obviously easier than if you're saying, oh, maximum of 10 students per school, because actually then they've got double the amount of staff they need to worry about. Little things that are not always within your control, but it's worth remembering that the school's having to battle with those. Transport's another one. I realise most of you won't have a budget that you can offer them in terms of grants to pay for their transport. If you do, definitely do it. It's a selling point, because whilst the event might be free to attend, the cover costs of staff and the transport costs are the things which can make it financially difficult for a school. And again, transport also relates to the number of students they bring. So are they going to bring a minibus full, in which case, what was that, 16 maybe? Or are they going to bring a coach load, in which case it's 50? They don't want to pay for a coach and not fill it, because then each student's having to pay more because they can't split the cost so much. Just bear in mind that if they can, whether they can walk or whether they're going to be doing that. What else have people come across? What is another barrier?
Teachers' confidence.
Yeah, that's a really good one, actually. Especially if they haven't got a biology background, they've never done any field work, actually going out in the field is a terrifying prospect, especially when they know that their students are going to be sort of let loose a bit. I guess I would imagine that the key to that is making sure that they're well informed and they've got information and a briefing from you guys to share your knowledge of that. So making it really, really clear what is expected of them on the day, making it clear that they don't need to be the expert and the experts or more experienced people, did we decide? Yeah, that they're there on the day to do the species identification, and that teachers actually are there in terms of looking after the students rather than having to run the day.
We've done light touch, twilight tasters, so like encourage the teachers along to the venue like a month before.
Yeah.
So it's tell them to say they can bring their kids, the dogs, the mother-in-laws, friends and family. Just say we're having a chill out wander. We provide Scooby snacks, like so they come 4 o'clock. Quite often it's a really nice evening. Or we've also offered free. Always get a word in there, but we've been able to offer free insects.
Oh, that's really good.
So say to the heads, the year before, can you let us have one of your insects or half a day of an insect, and and then plant seeds so that the teacher can build up to the event.
Yeah, it's almost like offering teachers CPD, isn't it? If they haven't got those skills, then that will allow them to have the confidence to bring them to your event, but also maybe to run their own BioBlitz as well, so that's double win. That's brilliant, yeah. And teachers will come to events like that. We put on twilights from sort of 4 till 6 or something, and as long as you go through the right networks to let people know about them, it's a really worthwhile thing to do, and you get a lot more buy-in from the school if they know what they're letting themselves in for. Yeah, brilliant.
Some schools and teachers are overly risk-averse.
Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking back to I went to a teacher's day at Longleat Safari Park, and one of the teachers just said, I'm never bringing students here, there's a stream, and there's no fence next to it. And they said we couldn't bring them here because they might drown in the stream. And you just think, what, really? So that is a genuine problem, and that's something that the schools need to address. All we can do is give them all the information, all the risk assessments. I don't know if you experienced any better ways of dealing with it.
No, I was thinking of Jill took some owl pellets into school to do owl pellet dissection. And even though we're the experts, it was, we must wear gloves and wash your hands every 5 minutes.
No, it's a dormouse
Oh,
box.
it was a dormouse
box
box.
with a nest in it, and they weren't even allowed to handle a dormouse nest without wearing gloves.
Yeah.
And although I would have given them spirit hand wash afterwards, it was like they weren't allowed to touch anything that would have been close to an animal, which I found really bizarre because I've not gone down with anything awful.
Yeah, they just get scared, I think. I think it is just teachers being worried about if they don't know about it. All I would be trying to do in that situation is make sure that they know everything we know about how safe it is and what the possible risks are. It's a long-term win, isn't it? Sort of slowly they'll get more confidence with it, I suppose. Yeah.
I think often people who are not used to being outdoors just don't have any clothing that's suitable. Even the teachers.
Yeah.
I went into one school once, we were having an outdoor day in the school, and not one teacher had a pair of Wellingtons. So they all had to go and buy them, and it's just another barrier.
Right, so could we have kit that if we can get the funding for it, could we have kit to lend out? Do you think that would help?
We might be able to borrow it from somewhere.
Borrowing it. Have you come across this, Matt?
Equipment, normally we've taken, if we're going to do things with schools, then we have equipment on site. We haven't really had a thing where we've lent it out.
Wellies and things.
We have enough trouble keeping hold of it, actually event itself.
Yeah.
Forest schools often have wellies. I've been into schools in Bristol who've got a forest school, and you can see 30 little pairs of wellies up, which is brilliant. I loved it.
So if it is a schools focused event and that's really key for you, is it worth thinking about doing it somewhere where wellies aren't crucial and actually trainers are fine? I know that would depend on weather, but yeah.
I think it's too much for someone who's organising
Okay.
See what a member, if they're not
Yeah.
interested, that's the
Yeah, it's just worth, I hadn't thought of that. So it is worth thinking, well, actually, if you're talking to inner city schools, might that be a challenge for them? Okay. Yeah?
I think really, I mean, all those kind of things, you just need to discuss it with the school and make sure that you're managing their expectations really, because it's all about that. And from my point of view, when we did our event, I mean, we thought about all these barriers, and there were tremendous numbers, but we still wanted to do it. And so we got the funding to pay for transport, Waterloos, and the, you know, the hand washing facilities that wasn't on the site, very remote. And everybody was fine. You know, they were all fine.
Success story.
Volunteers to do from St John's Ambulance to be there as first aid, so that we didn't have to kind of worry about that side of it. The school knew it was sorted. There are things you can do. You just need to be really careful with your planning and thoughtful and liaise with the schools and things that will be overcome. So don't pop.
Yeah, the two key things as we go through this next sort of half hour or so that come out are, it just needs a bit more organisation because you've got more children per adult, and also the, what was the other thing you just said? More organisation. And relationship with the teacher is key. That you need them to, you need to be working with them rather than telling them what's expected. Say, this is what we'd like to do on the day. Will this fit? Is this going to work for you? And if it works for both parties, then it's obviously a much more successful event, goes that saying. Okay, and unless anyone's got any, yeah?
Just a quick one. Do you have to, if you're inviting kids to an area and you've not worked with kids before, do you have to have gone through police checks and stuff like that?
It's grey, but no. Schools will like you to have done so. Schools, it's a DBS check now. The school will have their policy, so they might say it's compulsory. Most of them, as long as teachers are there and you're not left unaccompanied with them, they're fine with that. But schools do make up their own minds about what they think is an appropriate health and safety policy for their students. But I can chat to you a bit more about that later if you want to talk specifically about that. I did have a few final things that just really occurred to me when I was thinking about ways to talk to schools. We talked about giving schools as much notice as possible in terms of timing. Key messages. The temptation is to send people all of the information so that they can make a really informed decision about how wonderful the event's going to be. Don't. Keep it really, really short and sweet, and then tell them where they can go for more information, so a web link or an attachment with a really pretty flyer. Make sure the key bits of information, the date, the time, the age, why they should do it, the fact it's free, keep that as the main body of text, that's sufficient. So where they find out more, do you want them to phone you? Do you want them to email you? Do you want them to register their interest on a website? Make it clear how they can contact you and say yes, no, or I want more information. That's the next stage they're going to want. We talked about name contacts. We talked about it being a relationship as well. Let them know what to expect from you. So if they've said, yeah, we're interested, we'd like to bring a class of 30, you saying, okay, that's brilliant, I've logged that, I will be in touch at the end of next month with the next load of details. They know exactly where they are. They're not going to, there's less of an excuse for them to go, oh, we didn't think it was happening anymore. You've kind of set your expectations and you're building that relationship with them. Make the most of existing networks, yeah. Okay, I'm aware that we haven't got a vast amount of time, but I think it's really important to think about how your day is going to be different when you've got groups of students there rather than family groups. This is going to be very, very personal to what type of BioBlitz you run and what type of day you're going to be doing and what types of activities. But you can't just assume that student groups will sort of shoehorn and fit into what you've traditionally done and what you know works. It's different. You've got less adults, you've got more young people, and there's nothing worse than having loads and loads of teenagers with nothing to do. So over-plan. It doesn't matter if you don't follow that plan on the day, but you want to have a plan in place to make sure that you know what should be happening or could be happening if things aren't maybe running as smoothly as you'd like them to be. You might need additional activities, you might need additional members of staff, you might need to remember that actually they might not sit for as long on one activity as a family group might do. They might need to be moved around a bit more and be a bit more focused. There's all sorts of different ways you can make it work for student groups, and we heard some really good ideas earlier, things like simplifying the kind of identification they're doing. Might not be as good for your records, but if you've got student groups there, it's probably because you want them to get excited about it, not necessarily log really accurate data. You might need to make compromises, so think about simplifying that. think about looking for just a few key species, make up some extra resources maybe, focus on those. Bringing in an element of competition always goes down really well. The video I noticed focused on the fact that they were trying to beat the number of species from last year. Even just a simple little thing like that gives them a real drive. Kids love competition, and they love really gross, icky stuff as well. So if you've got, I don't know, if you're looking for poo and things, that it sounds horrendous, but it's true. Any element of competition or anything that's slightly gross, that will really get their attention, help them get involved. So I put together, Matt, my glamorous assistant, do you want to pass on this one? It's the most basic sheet in the world, but it's just to highlight some of the things that we've already talked about today. When it's going to be, is it going to be in the academic year? Is it going to be a time of day that suits schools? It might be that you need to start at 10 and finish at 2 so that they can fit it within their normal timetable day and so that they can get home in time to get their buses home. Simple things like that. And then exactly what's going to happen at each hour of the day, where's everyone going to be, what they're going to be doing. It's mostly just a chance for you to bring together some ideas that you've heard today and that you think you might want to incorporate into a schools focused day. I think we're probably not going to have time for a roundup after that. So I think the final slide I had was clear expectations, building a good relationship with your teacher contact, checking it's actually going to be them who's turning up on the day. Evaluating your success and sharing your learning. We've got a brilliant network to use, so if you know what works well with schools, help other people who maybe haven't worked with schools yet. And every school and every BioBlitz is different, so remember that, make it work for you, and don't assume that because something worked with one school that another school will be the same. They all make up their own bloody rules, so bear that in mind as well. So can we just have 5 minutes to just have a couple of group discussions? Excellent, all right.